Alright, hello everyone and welcome to the 5th episode of the iDebate server. I'm the moderator for tonight's debate, fully semi-automatic rifle, and today's topic will be, would a border wall be effective? Arguing in the affirmative is the iPhone user ConservativeHangout, a Christian conservative, while arguing in the negative is the iPhone user TheGayMenace, an atheist liberal. Each debater will be given a 5-minute opening argument. After each debater has given their opening, they will then have 10 minutes to rebut their opponent. After the rebuttals, they will have 20 minutes of open dialogue, asking each other questions with as minimal interruptions as possible. After the dialogue, they will both offer a 5-minute closing. This will conclude the debate, at which point we'll allow audience members to connect and ask questions to the debaters. The debaters will only answer questions that are directly asked, so if you wish to hear both people answer, make sure to ask both of them. The Q&A will last 30 minutes. After this 30 minutes has expired, the recording will stop, and any further discussion between the debaters or audience will not be included in the YouTube upload. The rules are as follows. The debaters will not be allowed to go over time during the opening or they will be muted. The rebuttal, however, will be given 15 to 20 seconds of overlap since the debaters will likely be creating it as we go along. The opening dialogue will be as free as possible. While the debaters are restricted from directly insulting one another at any point during the exchange, profanity will not be censored as long as it's not used gratuitously. If the conversation between the debaters becomes incoherent, I, the moderator, will intervene to bring it back to the point at hand. The closing will also last no more than 5 minutes or the debater will be muted. After each phase of the debate, I will let the debaters know they have 1 minute left, 30 seconds left, 10 seconds left, and if they are still taking their time after the time expires, they will be muted and we will move on to the next phase. The audience is allowed to utilize the text chat, fact-check the debaters, and deliberate the topic amongst themselves. However, you will not be allowed to connect until the Q&A, at which I will select audience members based on a first-come, first-served basis. You will be You'll be assigned the role of questioner, which will be allowed to connect in the voice chat. If both debaters understand and agree to these rules, we will go ahead and begin. Conservative Hangout, since you are arguing in the affirmative of the motion this evening, you will be given your opening argument first. You will start when you're ready.
All right. So I am obviously arguing in the affirmative that a wall is an effective and useful policy to respond to illegal immigration. I will be staying clear mostly of logistics and costs because those could be discussed in separate debates of their own. My arguments will mostly be derived from real-world examples of physical barriers put in place domestically and internationally. According to Politico, before 2010, Israel had about 16,000 illegal border crossings in 1 year along their border with Egypt. After a 143-mile-long wall was constructed, illegal border crossings dropped 99% in just 2 years. In Hungary, according to the Hungarian National Police, a physical barrier was built on its border with Croatia after hundreds of thousands of refugees were illegally crossing into Hungary. Just 2 days after construction, migrant captures decreased 99% and remained at that figure for the rest of the year. Domestically, according to the U.S. Border Patrol, in 2005, 800 arrests were made per day along the U.S.-Mexico border in Yuma, Arizona. After construction of a 114-mile-long wall, illegal border crossings in Yuma, Arizona have decreased 96%. Similar figures have been recorded in San Diego, El Paso, and Tucson. According to a study entitled Borders, Fences, and Walls, the amount of border walls has increased from less than 5 in 1945 to close to 70 in 2015. I ask why the significant increase in border wall constructions if border walls are not effective. And that is the end of my opening.
Alrighty. GayMenace, if you want to rebut, you have 5 minutes. Your
Rebuttal
opener,
or
your
my
opener,
opening?
your opener. I'm sorry.
Okay. So, typically, immigration policy aims to accomplish 3 goals, 2 of which are typically listed. Is my audio bad right now?
You're good.
2 goals: lower incoming drugs from the southern border, and lower illegal immigration. The wall is the least effective method for both of these. in America, on the southern border especially. The amount of people crossing over the border is typically done, or I'm so sorry, the way that migrants cross over the border is typically, or 40% of the time, overstaying visas. Immigrants who cross the border directly do not make up the rest of that entire 60%. The number, by most estimates, is roughly 45%. So you'd be building a wall to stop 45% of illegal immigrants, which would be a good idea um, if illegal immigrants caused so much economic problems, which they don't. Studies into the economic benefits versus the fiscal deficits caused by illegal immigration have come up with essentially saying that it is a wash. According to a study by the Migration Policy Institute, um, and Professor Gordon H. Hanson, illegal immigration benefit, the overall economic benefit is close enough to zero to essentially be a wash when you account for the fiscal burden that unauthorized immigrants impose. This also, I'm terribly sorry, this also doesn't account for the fact that illegal immigrants are more likely to pay taxes than they are to use government services. There's also the fact that in regards to drugs crossing over the border, most drugs cross through a legal point of entry and are smuggled in. If you wanted to use, um, if you wanted to use money to efficiently stop drug trafficking, the way to do it would not be to spend billions of dollars on a border wall. It would be to spend billions of dollars on innovating new ways to search for and detect drugs crossing over the southern border illegally. That about covers my opener.
Alrighty. Alright, Conservative Hangout, you have a 10-minute rebuttal.
All right. I kind of find it funny that you've pretty much said that 45% building a wall to stop 45% of illegal immigration is like not a significant figure by any means, especially when I've already presented multiple figures that stated everywhere where walls have been built that they have at least 90% efficacy. So I'm curious as to why 40 building a wall to stop 45% of illegal foot traffic is not viable. And along with that, you would also be stopping drugs because a lot of people who come from the southern border bring gross amounts of drugs with them. You also brought up how illegal immigrants are not a fiscal burden to our country, which is patently false. Uh, Illegal immigrants cost our country billions of dollars a year, considering how much money they put into our economy and how much money they suck from our economy, taking up our government benefits, is not even close to being uh, helpful for our country at all. Um, you also brought up cost, like I said. Um, I thought we were kind of here to talk about the conceptual idea of a wall working rather than talking about the cost or logistics because as I've already stated in my opening, uh, walls everywhere that I've documented have a 90% efficacy everywhere they've been implemented. So even if it was not cost efficient, why would we not put up a wall to have a 90% efficacy? I'm not saying it would have 90% efficacy, but even if there was a chance to stop 45% of illegal foot traffic, why would we not do it? That was my rebuttal.
Alright, GayMenace, you have 10 minutes. You there?
Yes, sorry, hit the wrong button. You listed three examples. One of them were refugees who aren't exactly flying into your boundaries. 1 second. Sorry about that. Um, uh, if you look at the examples that you listed, this isn't the same as the U.S.-Mexico border. Also, I didn't say they don't incur a fiscal deficit. I said that they incur economic benefits of cheap labor, which I don't like. However, it is true. But the economic benefit, when you consider it with the fiscal burden, essentially makes it out to be a wash. That's what I said. It's an important distinction. Also, if we're talking about efficient, and we're talking about in regards to southern bordering policy, it would work if we made the entirety of the desert in the area a glass hellscape of nuclear fire, but it wouldn't be efficient. You brought up a wall that we put up along, I believe, Arizona. Most of, as in more than all half of all foot traffic across the border, as according to NPR, comes from the Rio Grande Valley. Obstructing the flow of the Rio Grande is an act of war, as according to a treaty between Mexico and America that we signed at the end of the Mexican American War. In order to construct a wall in that case, we would have to pull it back from the border, and as a result, we would be having to take land from ranchers and farmers along the border. If we wanted to do that, I would say that's technically legal using eminent domain, but it's not efficient. An efficient way to go about this would be to invest in specific technologies to do this. Also, the border of Hungary is significantly shorter than the border of America and Mexico, and the border between Egypt and Israel is so ridiculously shorter it doesn't even beg to be brought up. The difference between the two is massive. Considering the way people immigrate and the way people immigrate illegally, it's nonsensical to say that this is in any way a case study that can be used to draw conclusions about the efficacy of a wall. There's also not as much incentive for people to cross the border. Illegal immigrants crossing from uh, Egypt into Israel aren't being driven by the same things that people crossing from Mexico into America are. It's important to realize that there are massive differences between all of the scenarios that you brought up and building a wall along the entire border. If you wanted to build a wall along the Rio Grande Valley, I mean, that would be incredibly difficult considering, imminent domain and war, but we could do it. And that would be the most effective area to build a wall, but a wall across the entire border is nonsensical. Also, most drugs do not come across the southern border in terms of like people walking across. They come across through legal points of entry. Those big beautiful gates Trump was talking about, that's where the drugs come from. You can't if you close those, then that's a whole other argument. That's my rebuttal.
Alrighty. Now we're going to be in 20 minutes of open dialogue. Alright, maybe begin.
All right. So you brought up short borders. Um, I'm curious why that matters. If you have a short border, build a wall for the length of the border. If you have a long border, build a wall for the length of the border. I'm not completely sold on why length of borders is an argument.
You have to man the whole wall. It costs money. If you wanted to just like build a wall in a short area, you can man it incredibly efficiently. If Israel wanted to man their entire wall, that would take very few people. But America does have a budget, regardless of the fact that everyone seems to be forgetting that nowadays on both sides of the aisle, and we can't just hire infinite people. Hiring more Border Patrol agents without properly screening and teaching them is disastrous.
Who
I would
said we're
recommend.
hiring border agents without screening them? Why would you do that?
You'd have to have a hiring surge. We did it already, and we did it before, and both times it's worked out pretty terribly. People being killed.
All right, I'm curious where that came from, but that's okay.
Yeah, get you a
Anyway,
source.
uh, okay, thank you, I appreciate that. Also, you brought up motivation for crossing a border. Uh, Crossing a border is crossing a border. I don't understand why motivation was brought up as an argument. Yeah, crossing a border from Egypt to Israel is different motivation from a Mexican crossing into America. It's still the same action. You're walking across the border. Motivation is not an argument to me at all.
Um, well, the difference is the amount of people and the infrastructure with which they have to cross the border.
And if
Crossing the
the
American
amount of
border.
people wouldn't matter if you
No,
have
no,
a
no.
wall.
The infrastructure. The infrastructure. Crossing the American border is a multi-million-dollar industry. Crossing the Israeli border is not. It was walking across the desert.
You do the
We
same
already
thing to
have.
walk in America.
No, they have tunnels. They have boats that go across. They have boats that go from Mexico to Cuba to Florida. Like this is a big industry. It's not. You're. It would be like treating It'd be like treating Bonnie and Clyde the same as treating like two just random people running around doing crime, the same as the organized Chicago mob. Right? You couldn't just do both of these things by shooting up a car. It wouldn't work. You need a more intense and a more direct and a more thoughtful solution in order to take out the more intense and complicated problem.
Which is multiple routes of entry. I mean, you don't think that we can stop people from coming out of tunnels?
Oh, I do. I don't think a wall is a very efficient way to do that.
It
I
has
think
been an efficient way, though.
it has been in situations that are completely inanalogous to America.
It has not. I just told you about the border wall in Arizona. 99% of people crossing the border are it's decreased 99%, and it includes people coming from tunnels. I don't understand how a wall is not efficient to stop that at all.
Because that's not the more than half come through an area where building a wall would be more difficult and we would have to build it with less foundation and we would have to be and policing it would be more difficult. The Rio Grande Valley.
I wouldn't argue that it would be more difficult to man, but I'm saying that even if hold on, I'm trying to find where I'm going here. Let's see. Dang, your keyboard's loud.
Sorry.
Oh, you also talked about drugs coming in from legal ports of entry.
Yeah.
What are you comparing that to? How do you know how much drugs come across the border that aren't legal ports of entry?
I'm using I'm using the what's it called? It's not CDC, it's the drug one. DEA is my source.
Okay,
I don't know exactly how they
I'm
I don't know
asking
how
how.
exactly they got their numbers,
Okay,
right? But that is the numbers that they say, and these numbers are the reasons why there's no border patrol or border security expert who agrees with building a wall.
so my issue with that is there's a difference between the percentage of drugs seized in a location and percentage of drugs being crossed over into a certain way. Yeah, the majority of drugs are caught at legal ports of entry because contact with customs agents is mandatory. You don't need, you don't. There's no contact with a customs person if you're coming across an unguarded, wide open piece of land with drugs.
This
There's
is
no way. There's no
absolutely
way.
unfounded.
There's no way to track drugs coming in across the border if you're not coming in through a legal port of entry. So how can you use the argument that most drugs come through legal ports of entry if there's no way to track them, no way to track the other way they come in?
This is completely unfounded and reason. Like you're arguing from conspiracy here.
How so? I'm saying there's not a way to track. I'm saying there's not a way to track drugs coming across an open border, which is a
Yeah,
fact.
but you don't have like a source for that. You don't have a source for you don't have a critique.
What source needs
You
to
don't
be
have a
said that
critique.
there's no way to track that? That's
You
a
don't
fact.
have you don't have a critique of the source. Like you're just saying they can't do this without knowing how the source does it.
I'm saying that your argument was that a wall would not stop drugs coming in because they come in through legal ports of entry, which is correct. I agree with that. But how can you compare that to drugs coming across a wide open piece of land if there's no way to track that?
Uh, you do realize that drugs like they pass through. Like we seize drugs everywhere along the border.
I'm aware.
90% of them happen at border crossings.
I'm aware of
and
that.
we are aware of
You're also
the
aware that
general idea.
they don't get caught 100% of the time.
No, but we're aware of the
There's no way.
general idea of the amount of drugs being shipped into the country.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
We have a general idea of how many drugs are being shipped into the country, of like the metric units of drugs that are being shipped in the country.
Okay, that's an amount. I'm saying.
Wait, if we
Amount
know how
seized.
many, if we know how many are brought in, and we know how many are stopped at legal ports of entry, we can figure out the total percentage that's stopped at legal ports of entry. If you're going to say that there's some magic stash of drugs we have no idea where it exists, or we don't know it's in the country, we don't know how it was brought in, well, there's just no evidence for this. I can't argue if you're just going to like bring up things without evidence.
I didn't bring up anything without evidence.
You did.
What did I bring up that without evidence?
You said that we have no way to know how many drugs are brought into the country. I just explained to you how we do.
I said that there's no way to track it. I'm saying, okay, we're just going in circles. I told you that yes, a certain percentage of drugs are caught at ports of entry, which I agree with, but you cannot use that as an argument to saying walls won't work to stop drugs if there's no tracking method into how other ways of people are bringing drugs in the country, which includes walking across an unguarded piece of land.
Okay. Imagine we had a cup and water is being poured in through two holes, right? I don't know where the second hole is, so I can't monitor how much water is coming through it, but I can monitor how much water is coming through the first hole. If I wanted to, I could look at the total amount of water in the cup, in this case, total amount of drugs that we know about in the country. It's a rough estimate, but it's, we know, right? And I can look at how many were seized, and I can say, hey, that's how many came through illegal ports of entry. This is something that has that we do studies on it. There's a reason why we patrol legal ports of entry so much. It's more profitable to move an 18-wheeler through and have a 10% chance of getting caught than it is to move one guy named Jeff over and have a 2% chance of getting caught.
This is true. I can agree with that. But okay, I was gonna bring something up that's not. We would be getting off topic if I brought that up, but that's okay. Okay, let's see if there's anything else I need to bring up here. You have anything for me?
Yeah, you have really bad comparisons. Like comparing Israel's border wall to America's is.
I didn't compare it. I just said a wall worked there.
Yeah, you said a wall works there with the implication that a wall would work here if a wall would work there,
A
right?
wall did
Otherwise, you
work
wouldn't
here.
bring it up.
It worked in Arizona, as I pointed
Yeah, a
out.
wall worked in Arizona to stop an area where less than like a tenth of the drugs of the people crossing the border come from. Arizona is the second most popular place where people come across the border, but it is literally 1/5 of the amount of people that come through the Rio Grande River Valley, which is a place where either we couldn't build a wall or building a wall would be a vast overstep of government power.
Well, I wouldn't be arguing to build a wall where we already have natural barriers.
It isn't a natural barrier. The Rio Grande River Valley is relatively easy to cross.
Okay, I was not saying it was a natural barrier. I'm saying that I was making a completely different point. I'm not going to build a wall across natural barriers. Actually, I just completely lost where I'm at. Fuck. Oh shit, where'd I go? Sorry, I lost where I'm at. Let's see. So you're saying that a wall would not. Fuck, I don't know what I'm doing.
I'm saying that a wall might be able to stop some of the illegal immigration, but
Okay.
but it wouldn't do enough to stop any of the bad things about illegal immigration to really make up for the amount it would cost and the vast overreaches of government power and the possibility of having, like, we would have to trust Donald Trump or some other politician to negotiate a seizure of land from one country to the other, right? Because building a wall would be the new border, and we would just say this is it, and one country on one side or the another of the Rio Grande River Valley would have to give up territory, and this would not be a very good thing. It's very bad. Building a fence is fine because a fence is cheap.
Okay.
right? But we put territory on the other side of the fence
So
we have
you
on the border.
sorry. So you'd be okay if we built a fence, but what is your idea of a wall then? If you're okay with a fence?
In some areas, I think fencing can be used, but I generally don't think a fence is a good idea either, because all this is, even if you could make like a perfect thing that said all people crossing the border will be caught, no matter how high tech and cheap, like if you could pay $10 and say all people crossing the border can be caught, that's not really good for me, because I want to fix the problem causing it. I don't want to just like put a band-aid on it. That's my personal opinion. But even from most conservative takes, which is that we should stop the illegal immigration, with some border security,
Okay.
right? The better idea is cameras along the motion tracking cameras along the border, more advanced tracking methods, um, drones, not fucking predator drones, but surveillance drones. Like these are the things that border control wants. Um, acting like acting like acting like a wall would be a replacement for those is kind of crazy. The estimated cost for the first bit of the wall is $5 billion. Assuming that we could get that money out without negatively affecting anything, snap our fingers, money that would be poorly spent on a wall. It would be better spent on something like better methods to detect drugs crossing the border, which is what border control wants.
I don't completely disagree with you. I think there should be other methods in conjunction with physical barriers. But even colloquially, we use the term wall. I don't even we don't it doesn't even have to be a wall. I'm in favor for any type of physical barrier that is effective in deterring illegal immigration. Uh, what Donald Trump is doing is what Donald Trump is. Whatever physical barrier we can put up to deter illegal immigration is what I would be in favor of, and whatever is working in every other country that I mentioned, think would be okay.
Those are incredibly different circumstances, or a subsect of the American circumstance, which is so minute in comparison to the rest of what you're trying to stop that it's ridiculous. In
So
Hungary, they have refugees who are starving and carrying their lives on their back. Okay, we
okay,
have Mexicans who live in a developing country with airports that fly into our country, or they get on a boat because we're not landlocked like Hungary. Hungary can make themselves into a fortress. We can't. We're not landlocked. We have one of the
but most
largest.
people don't come over through boats. A lot of people
They
come over through,
don't
and
now, but when
you
they
said
started,
even 45% come across via land,
yeah,
which is a very significant figure.
it would be if it was having like a massive negative impact on our economy.
Why does it matter if it's illegal?
Because
it's
I don't want to spend
45%.
money on something that's not harming people or being a negative impact.
Undocumented people, you have no idea who's coming to your country, is extremely dangerous. I don't understand.
Yeah, and whenever they commit crime or do something awful, they get deported.
So
Like we've
you,
been deported. Wait,
so it's
the
only
number of
dangerous if
illegal
they do the crime.
immigrants,
And then at
the
that point,
number
it's
of
too late.
the number of illegal immigrants has been decreasing steadily.
You have a little bit under 5 minutes.
Okay.
The number of illegal immigrants has been decreasing steadily over time. There's no evidence to show that these people are like, horrible criminal rapists, murderers, thieves, and stuff. That's
And I
that's just
never said they were,
doesn't
but
exist.
having the potential of people you have no idea coming to your country is extremely dangerous. And I want to
It
reduce that
could be, but
as much as I can.
we haven't seen any. I mean, kind of, I guess. If anything, really, um, yeah, like if we saw any evidence for it, but we don't.
You're aware that 9/11 was conducted by like 6 people, right? Whatever, 12,
Uh,
whatever it was.
yeah. Wait, are you saying they're going to do another 9/11? Like, is this the level of, like, really?
I never said that at all. I'm saying
You
that the
implied it.
potential exists for one person. Do you know how many people one person can kill with a bomb in a crowd?
I think the average is 40 to 50.
Oh, Now multiply that by the amount of people that are coming across the border. Do you not think that's extremely dangerous if you have no idea who's coming in?
No, because here's
The
the thing.
potential exists.
Mexico doesn't have a problem with suicide bombers. There's
You're
no
aware
there's
that
no there's no backing
I'm
to
not saying
that this
that they
could
would.
happen.
I'm saying the potential exists, and I want to lower that potential as much as I possibly could.
So conservative.
You gave the 45% figure, and I think as far as the wall statistics in Arizona, deterring 99% of people in that sector,
Which again is a fifth, like it's so small. It's literally nothing.
a fifth is not literally nothing.
No, that's a fifth of the largest one, which is it's literally 2.5. It's literally a tenth or a 20th or whatever.
So okay, so you're aware they made 800 arrests per day at that sector, correct?
No, and neither do I care. They make more in the Rio Grande River Valley.
That is whatever you said, the fifth of the largest or whatever.
Yeah.
800 arrests per day. If that's a small number to you, can you extrapolate that
What
figure
year was this?
to what's that?
What year was this?
What year was that? I think it was 2005. Yes, 2005. 800 arrests were made per day.
Do you have a source for what you're saying?
United States Border Patrol.
Yeah, can you post it?
No, I don't have no way to post this. I'm doing this
Okay.
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 I don't have a computer in front of me.
I'll quickly read through this. Naval Postgraduate School.
So I'm saying if 800, if 1/5 of the largest, whatever you said, is close to nothing, and the 800 arrests were made per day in that sector, extrapolate that number out, that's a very large problem.
I mean, you're saying it. Wait. Something existing isn't a problem. The consequences of that can be a problem. We haven't seen the consequences of this being a huge problem.
Illegal immigration is a problem. I'm not.
Wait, is it inherently a bad thing? Like, if illegal immigrants were coming over and like feeding puppies and making everyone happy, would this be a bad thing to you?
But that's a hypothetical. That's not happening at all.
Yeah. No. I'm trying to find out if you like believe inherently people breaking the law in this sense is a bad thing.
1 minute.
Yes.
Okay.
Laws exist for a reason.
So it is. So like.
Especially our laws.
So it is this.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So it is the third reason. Okay. So I didn't know if we'd actually get to that, but yeah. So the third reason people engage in certain border control policies is for the symbolic reason, for the symbolic idea of we must defend our country, right?
Yeah, it's not symbolic to want to defend my country from the potential of terrorists.
But wait, no.
And people committing crimes.
The wall would be inefficient, and there are better ways to set up a barrier to do this, right? Yes. This is what every border patrol expert in power says.
Obama's border patrol chief said that walls work. So
15
in
seconds. Wrap it up.
reference to a fence in certain areas.
I'm sorry.
In reference to a fence in certain areas, if you want various examples, like you need to make sure that they are analogous. First of all, I don't like Obama, and I don't like his cabinet or anything of the sort. But if you want to act like these things are analogous, you need to better establish the fact that they're analogous.
All right. Sorry to interject, but that is time. You both will get a 5-minute closing, and you'll both go in the same order that you started. So, Conservative Hangout, you go first.
All right. So, in closing, I will refer back to my opening about everywhere where physical barriers have been implemented, they have worked. And I am not buying the idea that length of borders and motivation has any merit on the effectiveness of what a wall does. If it's a short barrier, or if it's a short border, build a short wall. If it's a long border, build a long wall. Driven by motivation, yeah, people are motivated by different things. More people come over if they're refugees rather than coming over for economic opportunities. The action is the same. You're crossing a border. A wall is a physical barrier. Can't believe I have to explain this. A wall is a physical barrier to deter people from walking across that land, and it has been proven to be effective. And let's see, and that's about all I have. That's about my closing.
Alrighty, GayMenace, you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, sure. So I was not. So the length of the border is important because of the amount of people having the um, amount of money it takes to patrol it, the difficulty to patrol, and the areas that are more likely to be less patrolled. And also, when I said that the two situations are inanalogous, that's because there's a multi-million dollar, if not billion-dollar now, industry focused around crossing the border illegally with fake passports and other credentials, right? Compared to a bunch of people who are running away from terrorists. There is no industry there. There are no infrastructure systems set up to stop it or to enable it. And comparing that to the American border is disingenuous. The American border, the Yuma station that you're talking about, has a lot of problems. It wasn't perfectly or 99% or 94% effective. Um, it has been helpful. However, this is very different to a wall that would be in any way encouraged. Um, and also, you have to consider the various, gargantuan oversteps of government power needed to construct these walls. I don't like that, and I'd rather not have eminent domain enforced along one of the longest borders on Earth. Um, Especially when the alternative to the eminent domain is an act of war against our southern border. I would much prefer if we could focus our efforts into helping Mexico and other South American countries fix their issues. That way, we can stop the things that cause immigrants to want to leave those countries. But even from a conservative viewpoint, where you want to focus more on the actual border, a wall is not very effective. More effective, as per many border control officials and experts, more effective would be various high tech programs such as cameras, drones, and better trained, better equipped border patrol agents. The hiring surge has proven to be very destructive and in past, and doing it, and the hiring surge you would need to man the entire border is incredible. It's completely incomparable in terms of size. It would be much larger than anything we've done before, and the consequences would likely be much worse. In the last hiring surge, we had to cut Spanish out of the requirements for people who wanted to be Border Patrol agents. I'm sure we can all see why that might be a problem, and it's led to many instances of brutality and people mishandling their situation. That should cover my closing.
Alrighty. I will begin the 30-minute Q&A at this time. Anyone that wants to do or ask either of our debaters a question, put a 1 in the chat. Schrodinger, I see a 1 from you. I'll unmute you and you can ask your question. Be sure to direct your question at either one of the debaters or just mention that it's for both of them.
Jesus Christ.
Okay. My question is for Conservative Hangout.
I imagined.
You bring up the fact that there are walls that have been successful, but do you think that the walls that have been unsuccessful throughout history are an indication that this wall wouldn't work?
I think it should be taken into consideration. Obviously, you learn from mistakes of the past and you learn from them. Just don't do the same thing.
Okay.
Whatever those things may be.
Okay.
I'm not well versed in the failed walls of the past. I mostly educated myself where they worked, but I'm more than open to hear the issues of the walls in the past, and I think we can work through those and find solutions.
Okay.
Alrighty. Next question will go to Emily, A239.
Emil, I think.
Emile.
I just want to reference to TheGayMenace. Earlier you brought up the point that a better way to patrol the border would be with motion activated cameras and drones. But what do you think? Do you think that it would be easier to patrol a physical border with those added things than a border that is not physically there?
No, of course. I mean, if we wanted to talk about the perfectly stop illegal immigration as fast as possible, there's a lot of options, right? I'm talking about the most efficient way, the way that costs the least and gives us the most bang for our buck. If we wanted to, we could turn Mexico into a glass floor and be done with illegal immigrants and Mexico forever. That's not a very good idea. We could also invade Mexico. Can't be an illegal immigrant if you're, a legal citizen, right? But these, of course, are terrible ideas. You have to. The point of my statement is that we need to make sure that we are spending our money efficiently, not just throwing it to any idea that may work. Right? We can't just. It would be more efficient to pay for these things. Yes, building a barrier might help them be even more efficient, but I don't think it's worth it, and neither do many border patrol experts.
Does that sum up your question good?
Yep, I'm good.
All right. Next question will go to Dan for Logic.
All right, my question is directed to Conservative Hangout. Would you be in support of increasing the cap we have in legal immigration and actually be able to choose who goes in and where they go instead of fueling illegal immigration by having the cap?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I'm not quite understanding. Cap?
Yes, we have a cap on the amount of legal immigrants we can.
Oh, legal. Okay, I thought you said illegal. Sorry, can you repeat the question again? I'm going to get the whole.
Would you be in support of increasing the cap we have in legal immigration?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't care. I'm not against legal immigration at all. I only care about stopping illegal immigration. I think it's completely unfair for people to completely bypass the legal processes that we have in place to take a shortcut.
Well, they don't have much other choices because it's usually a 25-year wait period for most green cards.
I mean, they do have a choice. A lot of people to go through that 25-year wait process and go through it without any complaints, and they look down on the illegal people that came in through shortcuts. I mean, like I said, I'm in favor of increasing the cap, but I don't see why. I don't see why that's an issue.
All right. No further questions.
All right, thank you, Dan. We have another question from Too Lazy. So
Okay, my question is for Conservative Hangout. Is it realistic? Do you think it's realistic to use eminent domain to steal all the land you're going to have to take from all these ranchers who need the river to get access to their cattle? So they're going to fight the government tooth and nail, and this is going to be a decades-long process just to get the land.
I don't disagree with you at all. I don't like eminent domain. But I'm saying when we talk about the wall, Donald Trump has put out this image that to build one giant wall across the border, and that's said and done. Me personally, I'm in favor of putting up physical barriers in places where there's issues, and wherever we put up physical barriers in our country so far that have had issues, they have worked. But as far as
the issues,
I feel like that that area that you're talking about would be an incredibly complicated topic to discuss offhand at the moment. But as far as your question about eminent domain goes, I'm not a fan of using eminent domain to take people's property for the purposes of government.
is that a proper question? Alrighty, Schrodinger has another question.
All right. I guess my question's at Conservative Hangout again. Do you think that the reason that the places where walls were effective were because they actually stopped immigrants from coming in, or because they just went around the wall?
No, they absolutely diverted. Like they changed where they came in through, which is the entire idea. If you funnel people through a smaller area, you're gonna catch a higher percentage of people that are coming in illegally.
Okay, I get you.
Alrighty, does anyone have any other questions? Alrighty, I think that
Something-
wraps. Oh, what'd you say?
Could I address something, Conservative Hangouts?
Yeah, sure.
Conservative, if you look at image, like this study that was the vast majority, 500,000 over the entire year. The next highest is in Tucson, which is 166,000, right? 500,000 came through the Rio Grande River Valley. That's the problem area. That's the one where you have to, you know, take land from the ranchers or threaten war with Mexico. That's the one that's like, not only, that's the one where if you want to solve illegal immigration, not only do you have to either vastly overstep the boundaries or declare war, like you have to do it there. There's no other, oh, we can build barriers in other places. We already have barriers in a lot of places. Right? Like what would you be adding? What wall do you want more so than what we have?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Let's see.
Like if you look at this, it shows the fencing that we have put up.
But it's not showing the
You gotta
actual
scroll down.
fence.
No, it is. The red line is the border.
No, I'm saying I know it's showing where the fences are. Hold on.
Because you seem to be talking about the border fencing solution proposed by George Bush, but just, expanded upon. Right? A physical
Correct.
barrier in certain problem areas.
Right.
The certain problem areas are the ones that cause war or vast oversteps of government power. Like if you want to say a wall is a good idea, you have to address this. It's integral.
Okay.
Alrighty. So I think that wraps tonight's debate. The discussion will continue after I stop recording. Thank you all for coming, and I'll see you tomorrow.